We are now delighted to welcome our next radiant speaker, Dr. Lata Ravichandran ma'am, who has planned to immerse us in skill training. We would also like to welcome the chairpersons of the session, Dr. Arun Murugan sir, HOD and Professor, Department of Community Medicine, Founder, President, TATCOM, powerful MU member, Government Omandurar Medical College, Chennai, and Dr. Geetanjali ma'am, Professor and HOD, Department of Forensic Medicine, Government Villupuram Medical College.
On behalf of the Medcon Deepam 26, I warmly welcome Dr. Lata Ravichandran to this for a session. So, sir will just introduce.
So, good afternoon, everyone. Ma'am needs no introduction, but for the sake of this session, let me introduce her. Dr. Lata Ravichandran is a professor and head of pediatrics and dean of education at Sri Ramachandra Medical College and Research Institute. She's got 25 years of experience in teaching, research, academic leadership, and also an NMC expert member. She's the convener of NMC Nodal Center for Medical Education Technologies and editor-in-chief of Sri Ramachandra Journal of Health Sciences. She's got more than 40 publications with a H index of 11. This is a topic. Ma'am, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much for this introduction. First of all, I would like to send greetings on behalf of Sri Ramachandra Institute of Higher Education and Research from our leadership. I think it's best wishes and all love. And from the Department of Medical Education, which is, I think there are people online also who are all saying hi to most of you. I would wish to, submit my gratitude, to the Almighty for making me step into this Punya Bhumi on a very auspicious day. That's very personal to me. And also gratitude to all the organizers, the leadership of Government Tiruvannamalai Medical College and the beautiful team which has organized it. And little bit more, I have a gratitude to my two very close friends who are here, who exactly knew 30 years ago how this whole evolution and my introduction into education has been. So with this, today's topic is another 40 minutes or so, is about immersion. How many of you have actually worried? And I'm nearing my retirement. How many of you are, having, I should, want to tell your age. How about have you felt that, what if I fall ill and people should take care of me or my children or my grandchildren? How many of you have felt we are teaching these students, but then we are going to be in their hands? How many of you have thought about it? Have anybody? I would want to see yeah. And there are a few of them at behind looking down into their mobile now, because the next question will go to them, no? So the question is, if we are worried today that there's somebody who's going to take care of us in future, then that's why we are all here doing these conferences, lifelong learning, and trying to educate ourselves, having debate among ourselves on how our students should be. So in 1 second, I find everybody's face changed. Why? In 1 second, when we said we are in that position, and everybody started thinking, that is immersion. So not necessarily we need to go to technology, but then start with, how many of medical students are here? Anybody? Any medical students here? Organizers? Okay. if they are the medical in the emergency, if you are the casualty medical officer, that's one thing will change into immersion. But then I need to substantiate it scientifically and with all the evidences why at the level of CBME, while it says immersive for skills, I changed it a little bit to say in CBME because immersion is needed at every stage. You need to put them to the fact of reality understanding, the realism. I'm going to talk about what realism is. So my talk is about, as we have objectives, I'm going to question is, what do you mean by immersive learning? Everybody says immersive, and it's again medical jargon. What are they? It will be kept aside. Why immersive learning in CBME? What are the various methods of immersion that we can do and how to integrate it with the existing curriculum? When Swaminathan sir present EPS at the end of it, he was panting because he's going to write also, he thinks he has to implement. That's the stress that the medical educator takes because he has understood what the reality is. But then we need to put it into several well-defined steps. So everybody takes a responsibility. Ultimately, it is the learner who has to learn. All of us have had careers. We have walked a very difficult path. Today, even if there are 4 walls and if there are 10 people, I would do my session. But the learner has to learn. That is his responsibility that we have to keep pushing as a part of the CBME and also the challenges and opportunities that we have. Okay. So what is immersive learning? It is generally a terminology which is actually a little bit a branch of what we call experiential learning, but with more specific definition, is an educational approach. It is an educational approach and using technology, sometimes we call it as techniques also, the VR, virtual reality, augmented reality, and simulations, gamifications. All of this, why? Is because we have to create an environment which is similar to the real life situation. Unless you're pushed into the water, you will not learn swimming. But then we can't push everybody into the water. You try pushing them into water like so that they try to learn swimming. And it engages the learner. Engagement of the learner is the toughest problem that all of us are facing. Get them to latch on. 250 students, 150 students, 300 students in one lecture. How are we going to get them to capture them into our learning what to say connect? It is tough. Then learning by doing is mirroring the real life situation. Instead of telling so many things, you experience. So maybe this 40 minutes of lecture would have been better if you have arranged for an immersive skills lab sessions and asked you all to go one round, 10 minutes, it's over. You will learn what VR is, what is augmented reality. You will know what simulation-based education, what gamification. That is the difference and the immersion that we have to create. So it boosts retention. So when we go to, we have heard about some temple description. We have seen it online, but only when we actually visit, we'll know what it really means. Facilitate skill development in a safe control. The reason why we should do this, why is the student scared when he's told to do something is because he's scared that he might make a mistake. And if that mistake happens on a patient, then we are at soup. So safe failures can happen. So you need to create that environment. In fact, one of the most important immersive or simulation-based learning started in aviation. And I'm again relating to Swaminathan sir who said, it is about learning to fly, but are you going to fly in that particular flight which the pilot takes? That is the entrustment. So the more immersive you make, the entrustment also automatically comes. So the challenges the learners through experience like practicing surgery, neurosurgery, Barhol. They're seeing it for the first time. He's observed it. He has assisted it. But still, when you ask them to do it, there is a little bit of stress because he wants to do it correctly. Allow him to do in a realistic environment, whether the confidence level goes back. And that's coming back to Dr. Raja sir's what about its interventional and learning about educational intervention and its outcome as a research methodology. 10 neurology or even DM candidates you have, those with this practice of insert and immersive training and assess their outcomes in the theater and confidence level and another group which goes to the regular method, then crossover, and you get the outcome, whether this intervention is helped or not helped in the development of the skills. And you can actually not only stop with only grading them by an assessment, but actually the number of patient care outcomes that has come. And that is a quantitative way by which you can do. So educational research can be done beautifully with intervention when we are using the several technologies that we have, and the analytics are all there. It has said how much time they have trained to get to the perfection. And those who trained to the perfection are the ones who are giving better patient outcomes, can be measured. So coming to this, what do you mean by immersive learning? Generally, right now, we are using immersive learning terminology where technology has been used. And we say experiential learning on real life experiences. They are just posted without any giving them just an objective. They go for a field visit or they go and experience in some lab and come and reflect. But that reflection has to be guided. They can't reflect. I always tell the story of, I know here Dr. Arumugam and Dr. Ravi are there, both of my classmates are posting to King Institution in our community medicine. All we heard from our seniors, there will be a white elephant. It's a beautiful day out. And in the King Institution, there will be a train track going inside, and outside there is an ice cream parlor where you can have ice cream. Is that correct? But then the objective was that we have to go and observe BCG, how it has been prepared and how it is manufactured and how the cold chain is being maintained. That was the purpose. So that is experiential learning. While reflection is there, still all of us, let me accept myself as not very clear how to do this reflective writing, how to guide a student to reflection. But then more specific when it comes to an immersive learning, the facilitator role will be a checklist of things that he has to observe as what the student is doing right. Nowadays, students are always in technology. And Deepti madam mentioned about this the Z generation and the alpha generation. They are always into technology. They are getting a feedback. In mule singing, you do next moment you are getting excellent, good day, all these claps, everything is coming. So they want a feedback. They want a structured feedback. What went well first, not go and say you didn't do this well. What went well and how could we do this better? So going to why do we need this immersion? Anybody, any take on why? A few of the things I've already said, why we need this immersion, why we need this kind of an, why everybody's breaking their head, investment, trying to do this. Why we need this? Anybody? Pardon? Yeah, confidence, exactly. Impart more confidence. That's what we call safe failures. I am here. There is only a mannequin. Any number of times I could do. Even if I fail, it is okay. Whereas if I go and prick in somebody else and start an IV line, what might happen? I don't know. Who's there to guide me? So, correct. One. Anything else? Anything else? Structured feedback. Very good. Instant and structured feedback. Yes? Not necessarily it is always facilitator based. Even technology could do that also. Yes? Self-reflection. Very good. Self-reflection. I did it even in a mannequin, then you will see what his friend is doing. He friend did it in 3 times, I'm doing it 4 times. So there is immediately a peer reflection also and self-reflection. I'll change myself now. Allow adult learning. They're all adults. So they should be allowed that sort of a little bit of the privacy which they have, which we tend to impinge many times by giving marks. Yes, anything else? Okay, let me just project this. This one is patient safety. Right now, all patients are with Google. They don't want many people to come and examine them. They have the right to do so. And we are also worried, like, what will happen? One case of portal hypertension, there will be some 100 students coming and seeing. Is it correct? So, safety. One is practicing in a controlled environment. Skill development. So, it provides a platform, as everybody has agreed, that you can make safe failures. You can go on doing till, the same talk I gave it in one more conference as practice to perfect in Coimbatore. So it makes practice perfect. And also the teamwork and communication. Please remember, many times what we think of one skills lab only for medical students. No. You must put the same atmosphere that you're working in a ward and have a team approach over there. Then only they'll know how they'll talk to the nurse, how they will give the instruction, whether there is an allied health person. So in this, the STEM is common up to certain level, then only branch goes. That common training you should have. So that is team communication. So what we call it as the soft skills, communication is better taught and learned when we are using a controlled environment. And of course, standardizing the training. Okay, every checklist is made. I'm going to just go over how difficult it is to even create one structure. Sir was talking about EPAs, but then that has to be executed next level. While writing an EPA is one thing, how are you going to execute? Why everybody is running away from medical educators? They think we are going to give more work for them. But if you involve them in the framework itself, and we are discussing even the students, including them to create the framework, it works better. Stakeholder involvement is the first and most important in any curricular development. And of course, addresses the limitation, the legal concerns, so many things can be addressed and adapting to the new curricula. So with the new curricula, with so many competencies and outcomes being defined, we cannot execute it in true situations. We need to have some alternative methods. And of course, this again, it's a repetition, the ethical issues which are there, complementing traditional methods. Immediately they will say, then we will not do bedside teaching. No, bedside teaching is still a controlled environment and still holds as a top rated method of teaching for a clinician. But to enhance that, you must have other methods also. Coming to utilizing advanced technology like stimulators, AI, we'll talk more about it because the moment we talk about technology, we have to be cost effective. Deepti madam's cost effective. We have to space effective. We have to have the maximum utilization and best outcomes that comes out of it, both for the faculty and the students. So this is the difference. This is from the statistics that we have taken. What traditional versus immersive does. More structuring happens when we think that of our own health, think of a CABG being done by God's grace. Let us be all be healthy, but we want to be done by a student whom we trust the most and who can do it perfectly. So this is the level which we find that okay. So the retention rate you see 35% is more with immersive learning. I remember the days with Cunningham, first day, what is anterior, what is posterior, what is medial, lateral itself, it took for us months. And I relate to my own session of peritoneal reflection being taught by Professor Mohan, with a kerchief and trying to help us understand how it go. Now it's not like that, one video, one 3D image, and they know it. And they also know what is the role of imaging when it comes to even diagnostic. That is the application they should know from day one when they enter. And of course, the engagement level is high, 5 out of 5. They are engaged, they are doing. Give them an activity at every time. Don't make them sit. Otherwise, even one case percent, all 10 will be looking into their mobile and doing something else. So you have to engage the learners, and time to proficiency is much reduced by 50%. We are talking about only proficiency, not even mastery. They have to become, proficiency at the level of UG and mastery at level of postgraduates. So coming to this, so this is a classical example of how immersion happens. So the technologies, please take away AR, VR, we'll talk about it more. The technology enhances the interactive connect. We can't be always talking. We're going on talking, WhatsApping, one student will be very happy, but we can't do. So that kind of a feedback which comes because we use technology, and that causes the immersion. That causes the immersion, and that evolves into a learner engagement, and this is the principle. So coming to the key principles, I'm going to put the Kolb cycle over here. Always there must be a scientific evidence of whatever I'm talking. While all of us know immersive learning is important, in the training, we must know what is the learning cycle and the scientific basis, and this is the one. So actually, this is the Kolb cycle. Here, the feeling or the experience here, and early we thought the patient experience. Now, it is the actual hands-on experience in that realistic environment, and then a debriefing. So every faculty or a facilitator should know how to debrief. What went well? What could have been done better? And is there any specific concepts that you want to ask them to go and learn? You have to analyze their actions actually. So the analysis starts. If you have technology, it's a more measured analysis of which exactly is the part they are making a mistake. Even that mindfulness will come. Where exactly they get distracted also, we can pick up over there. And of course, the debriefing, reflection on what happened, analyze their actions, and watching peer simulation. He's not going to keep going. When you have 4 BLS training happening, he's going to look into his neighbor, what he's doing, whether anybody else is giving instruction for him or changing him. All of that is a learning experience. And the instructor debriefing, instructor helps participants assimilate this reflection into abstract concepts. You are doing all steps of BLS is because you can't afford to do even once, otherwise the patient will die. So that kind of a connect, that while he will do it like a technician initially, the what we call professionalism or the professional behavior, his application of knowledge will come only during the debriefing session. So every faculty who are involved in the simulation or anything should know how to do a debriefing. And of course, what we call re-immersion. It's not going to the patient. Initially, we said they learn through an experience, reflect, and go try it again. Here, they will try it again into the simulation or whichever lab they are posted to until they are comfortable and confident. So these are the various methods of immersion. On a quick grasp, virtual reality, the whole environment is virtual. Today, we might have this whole conference itself sitting from all parts of the world, going into a virtual conference arena. And all our projections will come over there. That is a virtual environment. And augmented reality is here we have the chairperson and I'm speaking. Suddenly we want student, you just bring your mobile, students will come over there. That is in the real environment, you put in some kind of a digital or a computerized structure that's called as augmented reality. And mixed reality when the physical as well as the digital interact with each other. And that is called as mixed reality. Then we come the 360-degree video. I think many people who have visited most of the Western countries everywhere, we go into a virtual where we can actually see the sea or suddenly some diver diving, some water flowing, the forest concepts, all of this commonly used in even in schools to actually tell them the various concepts of a forest or an hilly region and all those stuff. Then coming to the simulation, this we all of us know, having proper simulation education with the simulators, skill trainers, there are various grades and talk about realism and not talk about fidelity. Fidelity is a medical jargon. When we say realism, it is nearing the reality. So that's what defines the fidelity of any immersive learning. And coming to gamification, more used in technology as well as in chemistry based or mathematical based. And now in medical also we are using. So then what does a little bit non-technological immersion still happens? We were following it. That which is study abroad, going there and actually doing 1 year in a different context in a new place. Community-based projects. These are still immersive and internship. Still, we cannot take away internship. The practice actually happens at the bedside. So this is how is the Miller's pyramid structured to help you learn immersion. So you have to convert, somebody said who's a young 12th standard knowledge base. They are not into any pre-med over here. From knowledge acquisition, they have to make into application and doers. That is the tough challenge that all of us are having. So the passive learning, which happens or skill from a skill trainer, and it is converted to increasing level of realism where interaction is more, not only physical, emotional, and so many. Emotional as well as you also have the ultra, high fidelity or realistic one where it will really mimic a real theater. So this conversion should happen as they go from year 1, year 2, year 3, and year 4. But the most important is the story that you're going to narrate. Which is that story which are going to immerse is what that we have to determine. So you see the Miller's pyramid itself is going at several smaller levels to reach till they perform in a real patients. So this is the type of realism. The realism only may be a physical fidelity, just like skill trainers, psychological fidelity where you could get some emotions when a simulator is talking or reacting, or it would be a functional fidelity where you can have a setup like a pseudo monitor or like an ICU setup, which will give them some functional ABG, it will give some heart rate, vitals, all of this. So you see the realism is what is equivalent to fidelity. But when you technologically, or if you want to do research, as Dr. Raja has said, the fidelity determination of a particular immersive itself is a big research. It will say when the fidelity is high, when it is low, there are itinerary to each of them to say, okay, this got so many scores, so many scores, so many scores, so many performance and outcomes. That is a very big research. So this is the low fidelity. Here, static anatomical models, the paper-based and computer-based studies, and role play without an equipment. A little bit moderate fidelity when you get a feedback. When you compress, it gives you a feedback whether you did it correctly. That is a moderate fidelity. Then you have the high fidelity, the actual simulators, which you have the SimMan and the pediatric simulator. All of this, which will cry, which will also react to several situation computer-based changes that you can make. And the ultra high fidelity, this is the one. This is a neonatal, it's what is it? It's actually, it's an operation table where you are having a mannequin. On top of it, there is also a VR application, some AR also, and the whole atmosphere around is like a theater, but when it is not all real, but then it will push you into several complexity that you would want to learn from the time the patient is wheeled in and it is positioned and you operate it, and feedback is given immediately. And you have the holographic simulation where it is, you don't feel like as though it is a simulated environment, but a complete realistic. You get immersed. You think you're really doing a surgery or really doing some kind of a resuscitation that happens. So now the most important question, all was so beautiful. I also loved doing all these pictures, going into the websites. But the question is, okay, ma'am, how are we going to actually do it? Again, the answer goes back to what Swaminathan sir said. You have to first have the paper curriculum. You must have that in hand. Today, if my institution is asking me, if you want a skills lab, tell me, is your curriculum ready? That's the question they will ask. And we are thinking only of the medical professionals, but here healthcare is holistic and there are other healthcare professionals. So you must always have that as the end point. Create a feeling of working in a hospital. That is the final outcome. Our arena of work, where we take about medical education or health professional education, is that one arena where training, appropriate training leads to optimal patient care. If the training is not correct, the patient care is not correct, because you're not going to say my PG will get trained, then only I'm going to make him work. You're not going to do that. He's going to be with you. He's going to be part of your training. He's going to act and he's going to interact. Somebody said seniors are there. If juniors are telling the patients are not accepting. It is not the juniors. We have to introduce them as my healthcare team. I will be doing this kind of a work. My junior resident will come and take care of this aspects. That's the kind we have to change. I know still it is challenging. Somebody will say senior Dr. A. Pakala. So it is that communication part, what we should talk and how we should introduce are all structured, and that non-technical or skills, skills like communication and also the empathy and teamwork could also be well learned when you have the immersive learning environment. So how to do this immersion? We have actually not talked about standardized patient. There's a big group which we can use. We also have to customize it and context it to our Indian scenario. We can't just be doing whatever the West says. In the West, number of patients is less, and their the structure and the treatment method is entirely different. But we should customize till bedside clinics, which is structured, which is started with the pre-briefing and clearly instructed before it starts, is a very good tool when you want to train your students. So the existing program, the ADDIE model, you must have an analysis of what it is. And already we have said just I'm asking like a survey, is there a gap in our current skill training or the competency training? Is there a gap? Please put up your hand. How many of you? Yes, we perceive a gap. And the reason even this topic is being introduced here is we know that partially we have to bridge it with some kind of immersive learning. But again, the question will come, 250 students, skills lab, how can we rotate? How time is there? Are we supposed to have only simulators? Are there any other way for which you should have worked on your curricular framework? So this is what it is. So you should have taken, this is the gap analysis. Now, somebody said, I have created a beautiful, Madam Sangeeta Madam had said, We created a beautiful structured module. But the better way will be to put a needs assessment questionnaire. Do you require such a module? And ask that question to everybody and do a semi-structured interviewing with your own dean. And say, our students are having this problem. What do you suggest, sir? Then he will say the same suggestion. So that is the kind of research that we do, the qualitative research. Convert what you think as difficult into a research methodology, you will get an answer. Then you can show, this is the paper, sir. You are also part of this whole thing. You have said all of this. And you are also making them reflect on the true nature of the problem that we are facing. So focus group discussions is the other way. Don't keep only questionnaire. Sometimes it becomes questionnaire fatigue. Too many questions, they will not. Simply, they will tick. So don't make it as. In those days, what we used to do, we used to call a group of faculty and ask them what happened. Eppadi pochu? Nalla pocha? Ipo velila porche, they will ask. Any movie will go out? They would only come with the mic and say, how was the movie? So use that technique. Use focus group discussion. Individual, if you think somebody's leadership at something is difficult, do a semi-structured interviewing and gather the data and publish it. So the curricular goal is to have the master framework. Don't limit it to only medical. Please don't do that. If you want to get your leadership to latch on to this, make the framework wide and identify only that STEM area where you can cover all the other health professional training also. So this is the kind of the template. While we use most of the NMC template, I've extended it to say the EPAs, as said by Swaminathan sir, I've introduced the EPAs and I've also put the milestones. And at the end, I also put the professional scope. For example, the skill which has to be performed by a first year medical student or a second year medical student will be performed by a third year nursing student. That is the only little bit thinking. You call them for a meeting, involve the nursing, involve the allied health, and ask them at what limitation of their licensing they have to do. So that is the definition that you have to do. So this is an example. Foundational history taking. You actually identify the key history components. I have said I'm going to choose a virtual reality and the patient in an avatar. We are going to interact with an avatar, which is going to take a history. It's a very big, thing to think about. And I have put the levels as medical student and also a nursing student or a health professional student to second year, third year, that definition has been made. You may say it is not required. Why to bring one VR avatar when we're having so many patients? So let us give a checklist. Let them take a history. We will go and observe. Fantastic win-win situation. Now people have agreed to do a structured history taking. The next one is the skills. Here I've said insertion of an IV line. I've chosen augmented reality. This for a novice, understand the anatomical structure, should be able to perform the mini puncture and ensure patient comfort. If you think even mannequin after 2 or 3 pricks, it goes on getting damaged. If you think you could do it in an augmented reality, yes, the choice, the curriculum committee has to agree. There must be an assessment. And I've said it is for nursing student as well as a junior resident. So this, I'm not here. Please don't think that I am actually done the whole structure. I've given you an example of how you can make it contextual to your own needs. Don't think you should follow this. In our institution, we have decided VR will be used for certain things. That has come out of the exercise that we have done. So this is a standardized patient. And all of us will agree in all licensing, professionalism is important. You have to certify them with certain skills and communication. And standardized patient, let me tell you, training standardized patient, having standardized, Raghunandan sir is here. He would vouch on that. Standardized patient training and involving them in our regular teaching and learning is an excellent way of immersion. And it's only a technique. Let me say what makes it even immersive. We'll be talking more about it. So these are some of the example, the design and development, but we need to develop a prototype. So all these stories I also told in my institution, then say develop a prototype and tell me how exactly you did. And that prototype, how does it come? These are the components. You must know the concepts that has to go in the immersion. Just be very clear from the framework. You must know what is that narrative which is actually going to deliver it, the learning design. What is it that is going to come? Then whether it is a physical environment or it is a digital environment, then only the technology comes, VR and AR. So much preparation you should do. So what is that competency? How you want to, what concept you're going to give out of that? And what is the design that you want to do in a physical 250 student, physical or a virtual and digital environment, and then make the choice of what technology you want to use. So the story or the narrative becomes important. The realism and authenticity, you have to give the almost the realistic atmosphere, interactivity and agency, and not limited to one group of students, but it should be applicable to a larger, including even a consultant. Even after student training, if I have to do a surgery, I must be able to come and use the virtual reality lab for better patient outcomes. So that should be the continuity of immersive learning. So this is bring professional team and of course create a prototype. The prototype that we created is a pre-surgical plan. We went in for a VR application other than what is required for a basic skills lab that we have. We went for a VR and 2 VR labs. We had to satisfy the same thing. Cost effective, it has to be space effective, it has to be maximum utilized, and it should give the best outcomes. So the two kinds of thing. One was by our own student. He developed a very much indigenous type of an lab, which could give what is called a space effective VR lab. In a very small space, he kiosk type of a lab he designed. So that was only to the hardware part of it. But then he only gave the same basic NG tube, doing an catheterization, that kind of skills which could be done even in an ordinary skills lab. Then we realized, so then why do we have to repeat it? Then we went in for a higher level, which will not applicable for only the UG students, but more utilized for super specialty and board specialty. And that's the software called Immersive Touch software, which got integrated into our radiology and PACS. So it converts the images of CT and MRI, not MRI, mostly CT, into a 3D virtual image. And that virtual image depends upon the kind of segmentation. I think Dr. Arumugam is here. We have to specify the kind of segmentation to get the 3D image so that even more detailed per-operative findings could be captured in that. And the model comes out of it. We can do a 3D printing and the students will come and practice. Not only students, the operating surgeon will come and practice on it before they go into the theater. So that is the kind of software, advanced software and the pre-surgical plan. But to do this, we have to structure the context in terms of learning. This is very easy. Surgeon will come, he will demonstrate his training and go. But the structure has to be created, what exactly learning objectives that maps to the training and the immersive learning setup that we have to do. Here we have used a VR. We have used a 3D printing also. So we have to create that setup when the students are coming for the training. The case should be there. There must be a case history which is talking about this is what happened. Here it is a mandibular angle fracture. Then the VR tool. In the VR, they'll be able to even see where the fracture is. And if it is going to be only the osteology part of it, we can actually do it as an automated one. And they can also have all the tools which they can use to manipulate and how to reduce the fracture could be practiced. Then they can even do a 3D printing of the whole thing and actually try the manipulation also. And the learner task, a facilitator will be. So you see how much of this immersive setup that we have to do for that one mandibular fracture. So that is what is requiring more meticulous work. You need 24/7 people who are working on that to develop that. And of course, the facilitator role will be the teacher who comes and says, this is the right way of doing, this is the wrong way. And any innovative way they are trying, that could be tried over there, should be done by the surgeon who's actually guiding the students. So this is how the activity flow. So before the student, we have done all this structuring. The students are coming. There must be an instruction. You will go to the lab. They will pre-brief. This is all the activity that are lined up for you. These are the ones that you are going to do. And we will be observing it. And then we will debrief you on that. Tell them what went well. And they go for re-immersion if they have not done it properly. We call it as re-immersion. It's not into the operating theater, but back to the VR lab. So then assessments can be done. We can ask questions, viva over there. Cognitive, psychomotor can be tested when they are doing an attitudinal. If you're bringing the whole team, which is going to operate, including the nurse, that part of also the team play, everything can be assessed. So this is actually that what we call it as a structured plan for one session. But again, while we can have guidelines in general, which we train them, every case is individualized. So you can use it as a routine patient care outcome or quality check for your patient care. So coming to this, experiencing this, the PRAS model, most of the VR, AR models have been used in the engineering. So you can actually see this is the implementing. They must have a physical learning experience in a physical space, which is safe. That is the most important. An example is medical simulation. And the physical component should be use of physical models or a VR environment. So you see, immersive learning comprises is a big banner under which many things could come, but that physical space is the safe space that you have to construct. Second, it must be real time. The realism part of it. It must give them immediate feedback. So the feedback is the second component of the PRAS module. And for example, even in forensic, you can use VR. It will lead you to a lab and some analysis report which they submit will come as an will be interpreted and you will get a feedback immediately what we did well and what could have been done better. So there is application even in forensic medicine. The adaptive part, the learner experience adapts to the individual user's need and progress. So you have multiple students coming, they learn by peers, they look into others and they also learn through that. And if there has been some failures, they will go and see what problem has happened. And you can even actually adjust the complexity of the disease, that whatever condition which you are going to present till they succeed. And of course, synchronized. Never do it alone. If a student want to come on practice on his own, is fine. But always have a team approach because that teaches them the team approach to even patient care. How to do a team discussion before going into a surgery. So that is very important. So the same thing, I've just summarized it here. Then we can do the qualitative part, the feedback from the learner. We can assess, we can take a feedback, how confident you are feeling. That's very subjective. You can actually assess by how many times they have done it correctly and compare it with the outcomes which they do peroperatively as observed by the surgeon who is supervising him. And finally, in terms of patient outcomes. And return of investment. The only question they will ask, if we are suddenly asked your skills lab is there for so many times, what is the return of investment? Have you got the subscription? Are you training your faculty? Are you collecting money for that? That will be the only thing in mind. But remember, all of this is towards the improvement of patient care. If you had planned this surgery very well, the way of return of investment should be calculated is, if we had not done this pre-surgical planning, that complication would have not happened, which led to so many consequences and so much of expenditure from the hospital. If you are able to prove that, your return of investment matches. Most of the time, we become defensive, thinking we have to do only training, we have to get more students, we have to do faculty training. No, ultimately, it results in better patient outcomes.
Ma'am, time.
Yes. These are the last few slides. I'm just going to show you what we did in our institution. This is an example of an abnormally placed kidney and how the pre-surgically, the CT scan was done, reconstructed, and how pre-surgically the students are come and training, the kind of instruments that they can choose. And you can rotate it. Sometimes even aberrant vessels or impinging on the vessels. If there is we have done a lot of work on only the renal tumors, both in children as well as in adults. In one of them, we had a very aberrant artery which was picked up only by this segmentation. And peroperatively, it was proved. There are a lot of publications which are coming. Let me tell you, sir, publication, if you are using the technology applications, publications are really getting accepted very fast, but you have to do it very methodically. Then it goes through the immersion phase. This is the Circle of Willis training for our undergraduate student based on the CT images. And this is how you can actually, remove the different layers and actually make them learn. And similarly, the coronary circulation. And this is how they start with the pre-briefing. The tutor there starts with the pre-briefing, goes through the several layers, gives the relationship of the anatomical structures. Then the students actually they go through this immersion. Hands-on session. Then the reflection and the debrief with the facilitator. And they go for re-immersion. They go back again, not necessarily to the VR environment. They may go back to the dissection lab or to the models, where they will go and apply what they learned. And evaluation is through our LMS. The same thing is uploaded and an evaluation is given to them. So this is the whole about the coronary. So some of the challenges we already talked about: the infrastructure, the collaborative, the core team, which has to be multidisciplinary, faculty readiness, training of faculty. We have an copyrighted faculty training program, which we are doing 10 by 10, we are training the faculty. How to enhance visibility and also evaluation. These tools are started from the basic sciences, so now they are becoming very much accommodative to that. But the applications into the broad specialty and super specialty is still more of, good and bad, but that has to be structured. And sustenance, whether this will sustain, it depends upon the utility and the return of investment that my papers or our team or the committee has to submit it to the higher authorities. We have a process where it is reviewed every 3 months. That was my last slide. That's the applicability of whole of this immersion. And most of my references I've quoted then and there with the slides. And this is the last few. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for immersing each one of us for the past 45 minutes, ma'am, in immersive learning. Any questions? Or you can just contact ma'am during lunch.
Already we are all immersed.
Any questions from the audience? Thank you, Lata, for an excellent presentation and taking us back to my UG days. Just wanted, out of curiosity, how far it is received by the first clinical and second clinical students?
They have-
Your experience.
Yeah, they are very excited, first of all. Two things, we are addressing their need of technology. Second thing, their understanding of the whole difficult dissection becomes easy. We also have an on-table TVs which are there where they are seeing more than actually they are doing. I myself on day one, when we see radial nerve, everybody picked up something and said it's radial nerve and we had to accept it. But then now there is a more clearer picture and understanding. They are very, very happy. In fact, we are having trouble with that headset and all. They are doing it like that. They're very easily and they love to come to the VR lab.
Any more questions? Ma'am, I have a question for you. It's a
Yes, sir.
two-part question. The first part is, okay, we need to embrace technology, no other go. Future is that. But looking at the medical college across India, varied types of medical colleges. Let us take the last medical college in India. Last medical college, which has got the least amount of infrastructure, faculty, they got a lot of faculty issues, as well as the institutional culture and the landing cost of all these equipments and technologies. How do you think this will reach that last medical college? The second part is from the faculty point of view, because still now the faculty is already overstretched and the NMC wants a faculty to be a clinician, teacher, researcher, now a immersive simulation expert also. So you want to stretch some more?
To answer the first part of the question, as I said, everybody has a mobile phone now, even in the remotest part. When we talk about technology integration, not necessarily every medical college should have a VR lab or should have a simulation lab. We must do it the way West does as resource sharing. For one particular, let's say we take one district, there must be one lab which is shared, given by sharing basis. And there will be a core faculty who are trained only on the simulation-based education. In fact, the nodal centers were created with the idea of becoming specialized in certain areas. If we are good in skills lab, we will do that kind of a training for the faculty. That's again dividing the training part of it. So it not necessarily everybody should have everything, but we must know to do a resource sharing. That's number one. What we think as a lab, what you are imagining, ours is the most, unimpressive lab. We got only 2 laptop first, which we validated. But with that itself, all student training happened. Now it has become 10. And it is only 100 square feet room where we are doing this. So we don't need to actually have big infrastructure if you are integrating technology. And now what has happened, my co-convener, Dr. Kalpana, most of you will know, has brought it into the mobile. She can have a student through an app, take a heart into the mobile and actually look through it when she's doing the class. So technology also evolves. So the cost effectiveness will come, but judiciously, there must be a team which includes even an engineer and engineering people to come and decide which is appropriate for us. Stretching faculty. Here again, we don't ask every faculty to come and train in this. We have created a copyrighted faculty development program. Whichever interested faculty, VR is only a tool. Through VR, we are teaching them structuring and making a lesson plan for any kind of a skill training. So if they come for VR training, they learn that. If they come for simulation training, they learn that. But the agenda there is to tell you can't arbitrarily take a skill session. It has to be structured and trained. Whether it is VR or whether it is, see, I'm saying the technology came last, but the more preparation will be on the actual lesson plan that you do.
Sir, to add on to what you asked, madam, that the company people are there at the beginning, that complete anatomy. They have brought the complete anatomy VR aspect also into the mobile part.
Absolutely.
So first years at their own pace are reading anatomy even till the level of coronary angiograms. It's not just visualizing the coronary arteries in the heart in the dissection hall. So they have gone one step further and they have put all the coronary angiograms at the click of the button. Now, when it comes to cost, Rajiv Gandhi University, I'm proud to say they have given it free of cost to all the colleges which come under them, and the students don't have to spend anything, neither does the institution does. So that part,
That is resource sharing. So somebody has it and the technology can be transferred. I think that's how we should do it. And about this free and other things, I don't want to comment because nothing comes free. Because even to technology people to give us free, they have something into it. So let us be very clear. We are buying an iPhone mobile only for a cost. Similarly, when you want to integrate technology, there will be a cost. But how to, again, answering to Raja sir's funding, there are funding which is coming in DBT under the educational category, which are talking about existing lab getting expanded, and we have to explore. The reason is, again, another arm we have to develop is competency in grant writing and how to get these funds, for which you should take help from non-medical people. They'll help you how to design these. That's why I'm telling, bring the nurses, bring the allied health. They have a lot of other time. They'll help you with all grant writing, and also encourage PhD students in this.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very
On
much.
behalf of Metcon Deepam 26, we wholeheartedly thank you for your excellent talk. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am, for your immersive talk. Actually, this is reality. It's not virtual reality. It's a true reality. We need to embrace this. Maybe next 4-5 years, this will talk. But my only concern is this should not replace the regular clinical teaching. Because again,
Will-
patient is,
It will not. Actually, AI is not going to replace any of the teachers, but teachers not knowing AI will replace those. The teachers knowing AI will replace those who don't. So we need to get ourselves.
thank you, ma'am. And I thank all the organizers for this wonderful event, especially Dr. Priscilla and Dr. Anjana. Dr. Anjana was with me when we steamrolled this entire medical education process through government college. We did MedEd Connect some time back. So thank you, everyone. Thanks for this opportunity.
Thank you. My special thanks to Dr. Anjana, Dr. Priscilla, and Ashwin, for taking care of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your expertise talk, ma'am. Your clarity made a great impact on us.